Hello, dear friends. Welcome to another episode of McFly's Movie House. Today I am psyched because we're chatting about the one and only Jackie Chan and particularly his work on Police Story 1. As some of you know, this is my all-time favorite action movie. Nothing surpasses it. So much so, in fact, that it's made me very, very selective and picky with the action movies that I watch today. And that's just due to the sheer impressive nature of what Jackie Chan and his team are able to pull off. You just watch this with your mouth wide open. So, yeah, I can't wait to chat about this film. And the movies of his that I've seen, this one is my favorite. So, to help me out today, I have a special guest. He is also a film content creator and usually covers a lot of horror on his page. Has some absolutely deep cuts that I always appreciate finding out about, but he also happens to be a huge Jackie Chan action movie fan. So it's my absolute pleasure to welcome Pat Mitchell, aka Pippy Drippy, to the pod. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I thought, I'd have to wait till October to get on here, but
Nope.
as you said, mainly a horror person in general, but love, love action movies in general. But I love my main man JC. I'm so excited to talk about it. Thank you for having me in your home. I've taken off my shoes and I'm like
I
here to be
love
a
it.
very respectful guest of the pod.
We love it. We love to see it. We love to hear it. So, first things first, before we get started on this JC extravaganza, can you let me know what you've watched recently, new or old, and what you suggest my listeners and I check out?
I know it's so I know it's something that you've talked about specifically, and I finally got around to seeing it. But I saw Challengers and was like, my, like mind blown, which made me think. And at the expense of butchering his name, I'm just gonna call him Luca G. I don't know what that guy's name is.
Love.
Director Luca G. Is there a better three pack than Challengers, Bones and All, and the Suspiria remake? Like recently, I'm not sure there's
No.
like a better bang for your buck in terms of diversity and quality.
Mhm.
I was just thinking about that the other day. It's just three radically different movies, and I love them all so much. And Challengers was about as close to a 10 out of 10 as it gets.
I loved it. I loved it so much. And he's also working on a new film now. I think
I
it's
know.
actually done. Yeah.
I
What's
saw.
a Queer? It's just
Yeah.
called Queer, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I can't
Sure.
remember who's
Sign me
starring
up.
in that. Yeah, me too. Of course. I hear it's supposed to be a period piece, so I'm very curious how that's gonna
I
go.
I think he's just really pumped. He's more under the radar. Like he's not like a Villeneuve or a
Mhm.
Christopher Nolan where everything is kind of this event whenever they put stuff out. He's putting stuff out, but it's just they're so radically different and of such good quality. But I know that you've already seen
Mhm.
Challengers, but anyone who has not seen Challengers, I
Go
think
watch
in on
Challenger.
Letterboxd I said, and I don't know if you would agree, but it's like Uncut Gems meets E2 Mama Tambien. Like I was just like
Yes.
this very stressful exotic watch.
Yes, absolutely. It is stressful, and especially because you have that score too by Reznor and Ross, which is just like pumping into your bloodstream, essentially.
It's interesting
Oh,
how it
it's so
has
good.
like it's like a Pavlovian response. Like once the house music started hitting later in the movie, I was like getting anxious and nothing was happening. I was like, oh no, oh god, something's happening. Like it 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 almost teaches the viewer that like something is of circumstances about to happen. Just through that,
Mhm.
yeah, that pump and sort of like house music. I it like gave me I don't know. That's an interesting movie to watch. I loved the experience that I had with it.
I need to revisit it again. I went to an early screener and it was a room of people that weren't that interested in the film. And so they were just talking throughout the entire movie, and that kind of took me out ever so slightly. So I definitely want to revisit it again and in the comfort of my own home.
I could
So
see
that's my
that.
plan.
I think if I
Yeah.
were to give one horror mention, because I just
Hmm.
primarily, obviously, am consuming horror movies, I saw Oddity recently, and I think it's like my favorite horror movie of the year. I don't know if you've seen that yet.
Wow.
Yeah.
I haven't. Did that just get released?
It got like a limited theatrical run about 2 weeks ago. Like I had to go to a movie
Uh-huh.
theater that I don't frequent very often to go see it, and it was excellent. It was
What's it
so
about?
well. It's like this murder mystery with like some weird black magic elements to it. There's this incredibly insidious and despairing wooden mannequin that is just consuming a lot of your headspace. Whenever it's in a scene, you can't keep your eyes off of it, and it's not doing anything. The actors are sort of acting around it, but in the corner of
Hmm.
your eye, you're like, this thing is like you're managing what this thing is doing, which is nothing, but it consumes a lot of your brain space. It's unnerving. It's really good. Like a weird murder mystery with a lot of fantastical black magic elements. Very despairing and
Ooh.
disturbing and slow burn ish. I don't know. When I say slow burn, I feel like people are like, don't watch that. I don't want to watch that.
I love a good slow burn. If done correctly, slow burns are fantastic.
I think for
So,
you or
that
I, this would not be best described as a slow burn. I think for like an average sort of consumer of
yes.
cinema, it would be considered more slow burny. But I thought it was like really well paced for the most part. But yeah, I think that would be
Cool.
my horror recommendation.
Excellent. I'm gonna try and find that. I don't even know if it's in theaters yet here, probably. But yeah, I will look into that. So thank
It'll
you.
probably be streaming on Shutter or something similar within
Oh,
the next month or so.
easy peasy. I'll do
Yeah.
that then. Cool. So for today's episode, let me give you a bit of a loose breakdown, let's call it. We're going to first get into some background info on Jackie Chan himself, then get into police story, give like a super quick synopsis. Then I want to get into the specifics of what makes this movie so unique. You know, Jackie, how he goes about creating an idea for a film, the rhythmic nature of his fight sequences, the usage of props in comedy, yada, yada, yada. Feel free to interject whenever, but how does that sound?
Yes, I'm so excited.
Yes.
Actually, the the podcast that I used to have, this was one of the first movies I chose was Police Story,
Oh,
like to talk about. I chose to do a Jackie Chan movie every season. So, but this
yes.
was the first Jackie Chan movie that
Oh,
I chose, and my podcasting partner, hadn't seen it. This is a treat to do with somebody that has not seen it, to like
it is.
really share this with them. I can't think of a better gift.
Oh, I love it. What a full circle moment. This is beautiful.
Yes,
I
I'm
love
excited to
this.
talk about it again.
How
But
lovely.
yeah,
Yay. So, first of all, I'm curious how you got into Police Story and Jackie Chan's filmography because, as I said, like I can't think of anybody who loves this movie as much as I do.
I am a strange little boy, was a strange little boy who loved silent films. I loved the slapstick sort of a silent comedy. Loved Chaplin, Buster Keaton, and I saw Rumble in the Bronx, which was his first like North American sort of breakthrough. So I remember seeing Rumble in the Bronx, having it on VHS as a kid, and replaying all the fight sequences in that. Police Story specifically, though, I did not double back around to until I was an more of an adult because I remember just blind buying the Criterion when it came out, and that had to have been one of the first times I ever watched it. Instantly fell in love with it. I I could not. It is such a wonderment of choreogra- choreographed fight sequences. It's seriously a wonderment to behold that it still holds up and rivals anything that you could ever put out today in terms of a lot of things, but fight sequencing and the choreography of the fighting specifically. But I think the connection being is that he's an interest. Jackie Chan takes the elements of like old silent slapstick and kind of melds it with his martial arts background, and it's interesting because he's got like the hopeless romanticism of Chaplin, this like underdog sort of tramp, sort of character, and he melds that with the dangerously unhinged, stunt work of Buster Keaton.
Yes.
It's like the two worlds colliding, and it's so awesome because he's such a every character. He's always just this lovely sort of hopeless romantic guy, and he's so lovable. And then breaks out into these wonderfully imaginative action set pieces. It's just so great. So that's a long story short how I kind of double backed around to just falling in love, and then watching as much of his filmography as I could get my hands on.
Yay. Oh, I love that so much. We'll probably get into it later, but I watched Project A the other day,
Oh
and that
yeah.
stunt where he hangs off the clock tower, I couldn't believe it. Like, how do you do that?
And I'm actually so the Buster Keaton reference
Mm,
is interesting because there's the stunt in Police Story, not to get too ahead of ourselves, where he is hanging off of the bus with the umbrella,
yes.
and it mimics very closely a Buster Keaton movie. I believe it's called, the name escapes me, but
Hmm.
Buster Keaton is hanging off of a streetcar and while it's moving, and he's like flying in the air behind it, and he kind of maneuvers himself on top of it, and it's almost like a very similar stunt. And the stunt from Project A that you're talking about is like Harold Lloyd when he's
Yes.
hanging from the clock.
Yes.
It's he's literally, I've not seen any interviews with him where he specifically talks about his influences, but he's got to be influenced by these films because I see stuff that
Absolutely.
he does, and I think of Harold Lloyd, Buster Keaton, Chaplin. Like it's fantastic. I love that he's
Mhm.
modernizing those sorts of stunts though.
Yes, and the fact that they're real, like the fact that he's actually doing this stuff and getting injured, and we'll get into that in a bit, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring us back. So, a little background lesson, first of all, on the action industry in China and Hong Kong before we get into good old Jackie. So, this all actually started with Shanghai productions in the 1920s. And these early martial arts films drew influence from the Chinese opera and wuxia novels. So, these were narratives that were set in ancient China. They were supernatural, or they had supernatural martial arts elements. And these really early films had a lot of dramatized movements, but not actual martial arts skills. So, much like the Chinese opera or theater, music, dance, and acrobatics, those things were very, very crucial. So, then in the early 1930s, the government banned martial arts films, claiming that they promoted, what was it, superstition and feudalism. So, as a result, right, I know that was my reaction too. So, as a result, these Shanghai based film companies moved to Hong Kong, where this censorship didn't apply. And so, slowly with the rise of kung fu films, we started to see more of that hand to hand combat, less of that supernatural and elaborate swordplay, etc. Then in the 1950s, Wang Fei Hung became a prolific character in these movies. And this character was based on a real martial artist. I believe he was also a folk hero. Side note, Jackie Chan plays a version of him in Drunken Master. Did you know
Oh,
that
okay.
it's the
Yeah,
same?
I
Yeah, so
didn't
it's
know the
the
background of that. Yeah.
So it's the same character. I would assume that his role in Drunken Master is probably played up because he's not really the greatest guy in that one.
True. Yeah.
But I could be wrong. I don't know too much. So, anyways, this was all trending in the 1950s, and then finally we see a huge transformation in the 70s where the kung fu genre really grew into what we in the West started knowing it as. So, films with Bruce Lee, Fists of Fury, Enter the Dragon. Are you a fan of Bruce Lee movies, by the way?
I'm not very familiar other than like Enter the Dragon or like very the like
Mm,
surface level sort of stuff. So it seems like three different waves starting in the 70s, and it's like the
mm,
Shaw Brothers
mm.
sort of stuff, which materialized into the competition with Golden Harvest stuff. So you have you have like the Bruce Lee stuff, the Jackie Chan stuff, and then it kind of, that Shaw Brothers Golden Harvest sort of passing of the torch leads into like the 90s stuff where you get like Jet Li and like John Woo films and that sort of stuff. I found though that if I'm not watching Jackie Chan, I'm not having as much fun. I just
Same.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
sucks. Like it's almost like he ruined other stuff for me. Like I was like, well, it's
Yes.
not gonna be as good.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And that's again, as you were mentioning, because he incorporates that slapstick comedy. That's just like, how can you not have fun? But so where did I stop us? In the 70s, right. So
Yeah.
obviously, as we all know, Bruce Lee brought Kung Fu to the West, exposed folks to it. Then he had his untimely and tragic death in 73. And from there, I'm going to leave a little bit of a time gap because we're going to get back to it. But as you were saying, finally in the 80s and the 90s, we really see that golden age of Hong Kong cinema. And this, of course, included many of Jackie Chan's films. And especially by the late 90s and early 2000s, this martial arts influence and I guess started seeping into America more again. So we were getting movies like The Matrix, which had insane fight sequences, Kill Bill, obviously, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, that was huge. I'm trying to think what else. Even in present day, we have what? We have John Wick, The Raid, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Am I missing any big ones?
No, I mean, of the most influenced by his work, I
Yeah.
think those are the big ones. Yeah.
Which one's your favorite if you had to pick one of those modern ones?
I think Kill Bill has. I think like Tarantino has the real loving aesthetic.
Hmm.
Like he directs as a lover of film,
Yes.
and it doesn't feel like he's teaching you what you should like or the way directors kind of try to make it their own. His is almost
Hmm.
like this loving homage that he's just trying to modernize, and it's almost like he wants to make films that he loves,
Yes.
and make them his own. And so I think for those reasons, Kill Bill is just a perfect melding of the two, where you're like, I really love the homage to what he's harkening back to, but it's got
Hmm.
all of the insane depictions of Tarantino violence, which you don't get a lot of the like gore
Yeah,
with with a lot of these martial arts movies.
very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would
What
probably
about
go for
you?
Kill Bill as well. I would pick Kill Bill. I guess yeah, Kill Bill. If we're talking about like, well, no, that came out a while ago. I was gonna say in terms of like the most modern, I was gonna say The Raid, but that's now been how many years since the first
Yeah,
Raid came
it's
out? It's
crazy
been a while.
how much time. I mean, like you said, everything everywhere all at once
Yeah,
has those elements to it as well.
yeah,
But yeah, I think Kill Bill just sort of is the end all be all of the of that sort of loving
totally.
homage. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would pick the same. So, admittedly, this has all been kind of a very brief overview, but this now takes us to Jackie Chan's background and how he fits into it. I know I'm giving like the briefest history lesson of all
So
time,
we've
but you
covered
know what?
100 years of film history. Now we're ready to go.
But you know what? People can look it up themselves. You
Yeah,
know,
go
I'm
to
just giving
Wikipedia.
you.
There's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
yeah,
Figure it out.
you don't need
I
us.
did my research. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how familiar are you with his coming up in the biz?
I the only story I ever heard was that he was a construction worker, I believe, in Australia.
Yes.
And he was like an apprentice of somebody that took him under his wing, and that guy's name was Big Jaw or Big Jack or something. And so they just called him Little
Little
Jackie or
Jackie.
something to that effect. And so the only reason he's called Jackie Chan is from some like construction nickname that he got in Australia, which I thought was really cool. Like
Yeah.
obviously not his birth name, but what a
Mhm.
well, if you're talking about a screen name, that's a that's I love stories of how people came to be sort of
Same.
screen name, and you couldn't ask for a better one with Jackie Chan. But yeah, that's other than that, he's an enigma to me. It's like it's almost like he's always been 40 years old. Even now, he's 40. Like he doesn't look like he aged, but I also didn't ever think he was like a young man ever. Like all his movies, he's
Right?
just so no,
He's
I would
just always
love
been around.
he's always been around and he's always been the same age and he doesn't age now. He's still like I watched Golden Compass or like some crazy newer one. I think Arnold was in it too, and I was like, I don't know how he's still just like 40. Arnold looks every bit of 70.
Yes.
He's like
Oh,
aging
is
so
Arnold
gracefully.
70?
He's got to be. Oh my god, he's got to
Because
be.
Jackie's 70. He was born in 1954. So that'd be interesting if they were the same age. I have no idea how old Arnold is, but other
Arnold is
things people can research.
77.
Oh, okay. So he is a bit older.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there we go. We figured it out. So Jackie Chan, born in 54, as I said, he's 70. He came from a very poor Hong Kong family. So poor, in fact, that his parents almost sold him as a baby to a rich British couple. I just found this out the other day and I was shocked to find out. But when he was 7, his family enrolled him in the Chinese Opera Research Institute. And so 7 years old. He spent an entire decade there, training like crazy for a career in the opera. So he was busy learning martial arts, acrobatics, dancing, singing, sword fighting, literally anything you can think of. His teachers were intense. They had a stick and they would whack students with it and threaten them if they didn't want to perform. And actually, according to Jackie himself, he said that it's thanks to his teachers and beating him with a stick or a cane that toughened him up because he wasn't allowed to cry or make noise. And since then, that's what's helped him perform these dangerous stunts. Just wild,
Wow.
right?
Wow. This is great. I'm so glad I'm on here. I'll just absorb all this Jackie Chan knowledge. This is great.
It's
I didn't know any of that.
crazy. Yeah, it's incredible. I read his autobiography. Now I can't think of the name. I had to get a Kindle version of it, but that's where I found all this out. So highly recommend. And so yeah, so during this time while he was in the school, his parents were living in Australia. And then he briefly joined them in 1971, which is where we get that story that you mentioned with Big Jack and Little Jackie. So that happened in 71. But back to the opera school. So he was training at this opera school. This meant that his style was a lot more theatrical and acrobatic than Bruce Lee. Would you agree with that statement?
Yes. Yeah. It's a choreographed ballet of violence. Yeah.
Yes. I like that. Ballet of violence. I'm gonna next time I write a letterbox review, I'll be like ballet of violence. Yeah. Perfect. So after he came back to Hong Kong from Australia, he worked as a stuntman and stunt double. He actually notably worked on 2 films by Bruce Lee, or starring Bruce Lee. And he was actually the youngest stunt coordinator in Asia when he was only 18 years old.
Oh my
which
goodness.
is just bananas to me. How does that even happen?
Hang it up. None of us are going to ever be that level of accomplished. Yeah.
Ever. I mean, listen, I'm 31, so I'm not 18 anymore. So what's interesting is that Jackie didn't have success initially. I mean, he had success with what I just mentioned, but in terms of actually having a successful film career, not initially. He tried getting leading roles. He wasn't all that successful. And so he quit the industry briefly. And then he signed a contract with Lo Wei, the director of Bruce Lee's first 2 films. And that wasn't successful either. So it wasn't until he was borrowed by another filmmaker to do The Snake and the Eagle's Shadow in 1978, which started incorporating that comedy that we've later come to associate with him, that he finally began to gain star power. So it was the comedy that kind of brought him into the mix. So from there he did Drunken Master. That even did better than Eagle's Shadow, I believe. And that's kind of the movie that established him finally as Hong Kong's #1 action star. Have you seen, we said we've both seen Drunken Master. I haven't seen Eagle's Shadow. Have you?
No. I've never even heard of it.
Yeah, same. But apparently
some of his stuff is difficult to find it dubbed or like not, either subtitles or dubbed. I have run into stuff where I'll get a copy of it and then it'll just be, well, I can't watch this. You can still visually watch it. It's not like it's hard to follow or anything like that. But I kind of want to know what's going on. But no, I'd not heard of that. I think Drunken Master's got to be the oldest one that I've seen.
Same. Yeah. I love Drunken Master. Sadly, I've watched it only with the dub because it's all I could find. Have you seen the dub? Yeah.
No. I can't do dub as a hard and fast rule. I'd rather not even watch something unless it's purpose, like a spaghetti western, where it's like I don't know what the story behind spaghetti westerns is as to why everything needs to be dubbed in this comedic fashion, unless it's like intentional. Like I can't.
Yeah.
If there exists a copy of native language, then I will wait, I guess.
The
But
only
is it
things
extra hilarious?
Yes, because I mean, later on in his career, Jackie started doing his own dubs, but especially with Drunken Master, it's so early on, it's not his voice, but it sounds like this. I don't know. It sounds like he's from California. He's this surfer guy. It's just so not even. It's just it's so bad. It's so bad.
See, that's distracting to me. I'd be like, this is too distracting. I can't even follow. That's hilarious though.
The only two exceptions I'll make to the dub rule are Giallo movies, because so
Yes,
many of them
Giallo's
are
another example.
yeah.
I'm not sure exactly what's going. Like, do you know the reason behind why they do
No,
that?
my guess would be, and watch me say this guess, and then I'm gonna get someone in the comments just well, actually, but
Oh,
my guess
no,
would be
yeah.
because they are perhaps borrowing from so many other countries. Like they would borrow a French actor, they would borrow a German actor, an actor from America. Maybe that's why,
I could see that.
so it could
And
all be a
the
consistent
link here, obviously, spaghetti westerns and giallos all being Italian. It's
Italian.
a more of a, it's definitely they do that real loosey goosey sort of dubbing with a lot of Italian movies where the only kind of copy that exists is this bad dubbed English version. So yeah,
Yes.
it's interesting.
You kind of get used to it though. I don't know. With Jalos, I'm like, you know what? I signed up for this. I know it.
Yes, like if I know I'm
Yeah.
watching an Argento movie, that's like parts and parcel or whatever with just watching. It's part of the experience, honestly.
Totally. And that's how I feel with old like kung fu movies as well.
Yeah,
It's a weird exception that I'll make. I don't know why, but I will. Maybe just because that's how I saw some of these movies when I was younger. So maybe it's that
yes, that
association.
makes sense.
Yeah. But so getting us back, so with Drunken Master, it's cool to me at least because it serves as a mini history lesson to martial arts history. Personally, I didn't know that the drunken fist style of kung fu is a real thing, like an ancient
Oh, it
fighting
is.
style. Did you
Oh,
know?
yeah. No, no idea.
Yeah, it is. So when I discovered that, I was like, oh my God, this isn't just being played up for laughs. This is like an actual real thing. And then I felt really insensitive, but then I went and researched it a bit more. But yeah, so I just wanted to bring that up for those of you who didn't know. I thought you knew. So there you go. Learning
No,
lesson for all of us.
I'm learning so much.
Amazing.
This is great.
I know. It's wonderful. So as we were saying, what really worked with Jackie was showing that he wasn't the new Bruce Lee. He truly made his style his own. And I believe I was even reading like a quote somewhere where Jackie said, where Bruce Lee kicks high, he hits low. And where Bruce Lee gets hurt, he adds comedy. So he just tried making things very, very different and unique and bringing his own flair into the mix. So yeah, I think by now he's been in over 200 films. He's won an honorary Oscar. I think that was in 2016. And he actually holds a Guinness World Record. Do you know about this?
No. I wonder
So
what it could be.
I don't know when this was given to him, but he holds the record for the most stunts performed by a living actor.
Oh, wow. Soon
Yeah.
to be usurped by Tom Cruise at the rate we're going here.
Do you think?
I don't know. I mean,
Maybe.
his insistence on being his own stuntman in a modern world is the last vestiges of that sort of ideology. I don't know if he'll get there because Jackie is
A
somehow
professional.
still putting out movies though too.
Yes.
And Tom Cruise did not become an action star until sort of later in his career anyway, so probably not, but Tom Cruise is probably up there, I would imagine.
Yeah, I would say so for sure. I don't even know what sort of injuries Tom Cruise has had or if he's had worse ones than Jackie, but Jackie's broken like everything, it feels like.
Yeah, I love the end of a Jackie Chan movie because it's just like a film reel of every injury that happened, and it's like so insane. I mean,
ouch.
There's a stunt where Tom Cruise was jumping building to building in one of the Mission Impossible movies, and he breaks his ankle and I think the take that they use in the film is the one where he like just shatters his ankle doing it. So I know he's gotten like hurt
Something.
doing those Mission
Yeah.
Impossible movies. Yeah.
Huh. Okay, well, I'm going to look that up after. I'm very curious how many
Yeah.
stunts he's done and all of that. But this brings us now to Police Story. Are you ready?
Yeah. Yes. So ready.
Yes, me too. So, Police Story came out in 1985, starring, of course, Jackie Chan, also directed by Jackie Chan. He co wrote the script with Edward Tang. This also happens to be what Jackie considers his best action film.
Hmm.
Spawned a Police Story franchise. Have you seen the other Police Stories?
I've not seen three. I've seen two. It's not as good as one, but I will
Yeah.
say that the playground fight sequence in two
Yes.
is like is a wonder to behold. It's great. It's just the rest of the movie doesn't hold up to the standards of the first one, but it's like very few films do. So
Yeah. I was going to say the exact same thing.
good.
I
Okay.
thought it relied too much on narrative and it got too serious where you just kind of want that action.
Yeah,
But
they
yes,
went
I
away
agree
from
with
it a
you.
little bit.
Yeah.
Have you seen the third
Very,
one then?
no, just the first
No.
two. The second one really kind of made me, it disappointed me. Like it was okay. But I mean, like I said, I loved the first one. So now I'm like, do I want to watch the third? I don't know.
That's true. I should probably, for completionist's sake, track down the
Yes.
third one. It's not going to be a bad time, but yeah,
But it's,
you can't keep it to the
go
same
ahead.
standards.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Like, if you look at the Criterion release, it's just the first two. Like, I wonder why the third wasn't included. It makes me think, oh, is it maybe not that good?
Or is it just a film rights thing? They only had the right. I don't know. I have no
Oh,
idea.
maybe. But anyway, so Jackie Chan made Police Story after he had returned from a failed breakthrough in Hollywood. And I was listening to Edgar Wright talk about how Jackie came back from Hollywood with full vengeance. And he says that it was basically like a fuck you to Hollywood for not wanting to
Hmm.
work with him. And essentially, like, a, look what I can do. And I mean, look, we did, because
Yeah,
Police Story is incredible.
and sometimes
So,
that vengeance sort of like the people that are hell bent on proving people wrong, obviously
yes.
tend to put out their their best shit. So that makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, this was what, 85? We were saying that he started in the, what was it, 70s, mid 70s. So that's a lot of time for someone to not be, this huge success. Of course, he was probably fed up and wanted to just make something as grand as Police Story. So, yeah, I would agree with you. That vengeance as a motivation is a wonderful thing. So, with the first Police Story, Jackie plays a police officer, Ka Kui Chan, or Kevin in the translation. And right off the bat, I'm going to stick with Kevin for the remainder of this episode just so I don't butcher any more names. So, right off the bat, he and his team managed to arrest a kingpin drug dealer after a bonkers intro, which we'll get into, I'm sure, because I love that intro. But while this drug lord is awaiting his court trial, Kevin now must protect his dealer's secretary, Selena. You're loving the Kevin, so am I. And
It's such a
we're to,
whitewashed name. It's like you're
yes.
Kevin. You're Kevin.
It's so good. So Kevin now he has to protect this kingpin's secretary, Selena, and she's made to testify against her boss in court. Because of this, she has to stay alive. So that's where Jackie or Kevin comes in. And of course, things don't go according to plan. Kevin's bosses hate his unorthodox way of doing things. So he's juggling pleasing them. He's juggling being a good boyfriend to his longtime girlfriend, May, played by a very young Maggie Chung. I always have to just say that as an aside because I'm a huge Wong Kar-wai fan, as everybody
Mm.
knows. And we get two mainstays here. We get Bridget Lin as Selena
Hmm.
and Maggie Chung, of course.
Hmm. Is this
So
like one of her
I
first roles?
I would assume so. She
Hmm.
looks like very, very young.
A baby, yeah.
Very young. Yeah. But I love both of them so much. So they also get caught in the crossfire of this film, notably that final mall sequence. Like seeing Bridget Lin get tossed around in all that glass, I was shocked when I first saw it. Even Maggie Chung with her little scooter as well. Like everybody's getting hurt in this movie.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
It's a real, equal opportunity of pain. Yeah.
yes. So that's kind of my synopsis of Police Story. Did you want to add anything?
No, I don't, and I do. I think it's hilarious because I was watching your Lost Highway episode, and you were like,
Oh
I
yeah.
have 9 pages worth of notes. I have 2 pages worth of notes for Police Story, and they're mainly just, God damn, that ruled. So, like, in terms of like comparing the two, this is like cinematic whiplash to try to really deduce what David Lynch is trying to say with Lost Highway, to turn your brain off and watch 2 hours of the best martial arts sequencing you could ever hope to like get in a movie. And it's a loosey goosey plot that ultimately doesn't matter. And that's in my notes as well for later, that
Mhm.
you're not going into the Jackie Chan movie for this intricate sort of Christopher Nolan-esque, just conception. It's not. I'm
Yeah.
here to see Jackie just lay waste to people. Yeah.
Totally. Because then if you think about it, as we were saying in the second one, when they do try to rely on story, no, thumbs down.
This is what
So,
happens. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So we
Let
just we
Jackie drive the bus
yes, let him drive or hang off of the
or
bus.
hang off the side. Yeah.
There you go. There you go. Same page. So Jackie Chan began Police Story after finishing, was it The Protector? And the way he went about it is he decided he wanted to make a movie about a cop, but he wanted to do it in a way that he wanted to. And so he was just walking around Hong Kong one day, and he noticed how much the city changed from what was once just these cramped buildings to these giant skyscrapers. And notably, he says that everything was either steel or glass. So this just looked like a playground for him, of course.
Of course.
And
Yeah.
and so he arranged to meet with Edward Tang, and he told him that he wanted to do a film in which the action played with glass by breaking it, smashing through it, falling through it. And he essentially only wanted four things in this movie, and that was the bus chase scene, the mall scene, the car going down the village, and the fourth thing was just general, it was just comedy.
Yeah.
So Tang then went and made a script totally opposite to what is done in Hollywood. He wrote a story around those elements that Jackie wanted. And those four things are my favorites in the movie. So anything you want to add to that whole, I
Yeah,
guess, how he
it's
looked at it?
interesting. The story is just there. Unlike other movies, the story is there as filler to get you to the next set piece, the next action
Yes.
set piece. Whereas high end, highbrow sort of cinema is patient and everything has meaning. This is not that. This is get me from point A to point B as efficiently as possible while still telling a story, but I'm anticipating getting to that next action set piece where I am now locked in totally again.
Yes.
And what makes it work is though to not make that the story elements, you want to engage people. That's where you find a lot of the comedy to kind of relieve yourself until you get to the next really gonzo sort of set piece. And that's kind of how this movie rides up and down. The story is just there to kind of as quickly as possible get you to the next set.
Mm-hmm. Yes, to escort you. I completely agree.
Yeah.
Yes. So, as we said, this is his favorite action film, but also the opening sequence and the final mall sequence are among two of his favorite stunts that he's ever done. And considering Jackie's made over 200 movies, that's like high praise.
In
What's
the
your
same
favorite
film.
stunt? Yeah. What's your
In
favorite
this
stunt in the film? Yeah.
in this film or Jackie in general?
This film, Police Story.
Yes. Here's the thing. It's bookended. I mean, it's bookended with two of them, and there's no hyperbole, two of the greatest action sequences of all time, and it just bookended this movie with them. It's insane. I mean, the car chase scene where they're rocketing through the shanty town. What? I mean, just like what an incredible intro as to what you're getting yourself into. And if that weren't enough, he then does like his best Buster Keaton off the side of the bus with the umbrella in ridiculously physical sort of stunt work that ends in three of his guys rocketing out the front end of the bus onto literal concrete. It's like, there's no, they're not, it isn't shot in a way to where you can't see where they land, so they're clearly landing on padding. It's three
Mhm.
dudes doing front flips out the front window of a bus onto concrete. It's insane.
Yeah.
But as much as that is like, wow, what an intro. Now I'm locked in. It's the mall sequence is simply, if I were to do a a short list of the greatest action set pieces of all time, it would be the chase scene in T2 through the canal.
Yes.
It would be Stallone breaking out of jail in First Blood, and it would be Jackie literally going like, if there's a glass surface, I'm putting someone through it, and every single piece in this mall is getting absolutely destroyed. And you will never see in any movie somebody doing a stunt so crazy they have to show it to you 3 times because it's that impressive. That he he and it's a one take Johnny shot where it's like, I either do this and die, or I'm not doing this again. He can't do it again. But him careening down 3 stories worth of exploding Christmas lights is unlike anything you'll ever see. And they show it to you from 3 different angles because they're like arms crossed, like, check out this shit. Like, who's so cocky enough to be like, I'm gonna show you this shot 3 times. I
I
love
love
it.
that he does that in his other movies too, like that clock tower bit in Project A. I'm pretty sure he shows that either 3 times or twice too.
I love
So,
that. If it's something really
same.
cool, he's not averse to being like,
No,
check
I
out what
did this.
we did here. Yeah, I did this. I built this with my hands. Yes. The mall sequence is just simply like, to call it one set piece is insane because it's like the last 25 minutes of the film. It's like never
Yeah.
ending amount of, like, I can't, like, there's not enough sugar glass on the planet. Like, I don't know what they're clearly, they're not going through real glass, obviously, but it also has some really artistically designed shots. The one where his head is pushed up against the glass and it breaks, but you
Yes.
see it from the other side, is so cool. It's like, this is unlike anything I've ever seen before. It's incredible. And that's
Oh,
obviously the cover of the Criterion, uh,
yes.
is that specific shot of him, and you're as a viewer on the other side of the glass, like, ooh, like, so
This
cool.
looks
It's just,
interesting.
I love it. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, you're making me want to change my mind now and also pick the final sequence. For me, I always say it's the umbrella in the bus. I don't know why. That's just to me bonkers to hang off of a bus with an umbrella.
Well,
I
there's
like I
nothing
don't know why.
comedic necessarily about the mall sequence. There's a
That
lot.
is true.
There's some whimsical sort of playful sort of violence with the opening sequence. Him hanging off the
Hmm.
bus is like the most Chaplin, Buster Keaton esque
Yeah,
thing in the movie. But whereas it is a what do you prefer type of thing.
that's
The
true.
the mall sequencing is just beautifully choreographed, martial arts stuff for,
Hmm.
20 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm splitting hairs at this point. Like, I love all of it
Yes.
in this movie. But
Here's
if I
the
had
spoiler alert. Yeah, there's no wrong answer. So,
Yes, exactly. So this is actually a great little segue. This brings us to the 2 major fight sequences in the movie, which we just kind of covered, but let's do it in more detail. So, as we said, the film opens with the demolishing of that small shanty town. What were your thoughts, if you can remember, when you first saw this? Like, just that opening. I was locked in.
I do this thing where I sort of, sometimes when I watch movies, I'm doing too much. I think I was like, I think I remember specifically though, I was in the kitchen, I was maybe making a sandwich, making food or something, and I was like, I got my new Criterion haul in, I'm going to throw this new Jackie. I had to like stop what I was doing, go back, like click start scene. I was like, what happened? What is going on? Like, we're already careening down through this like real shanty town. Like, these 2 cars are obliterated at the end of it. I was like,
Hmm.
okay, back up. I got I guess I can't move for the next 2 hours. It's not that kind of movie. Blink, you'll miss. It's just one of those movies that you can't help but be locked into. It commands your attention.
Totally. And I mean,
So
what a way
specifically the
to
start.
open. Yes, what a way to open. And for context, for those of you who haven't seen it, the Royal Hong Kong Police Force is doing what they're calling Operation Boar Hunt. And as we
Is that
said,
what it's
this
called?
is, yeah,
Oh,
Operation Boar Hunt. So as we said, this is an undercover sting to arrest that crime lord. What's his name? Chu Tao. And
sure.
so
Why
Kevin,
can't they? Why can't he be? Yeah, he should be
Kevin,
Bob.
so Kevin and his other undercover, I was going to say undercover friends, undercover officers are in this town, but the criminals spot them. And so this turns into first a massive shootout, but the piece de resistance is Chu and his men getting in a car and driving through the town, like we said. And what makes this just such a spectacle to watch is it's done through this wide angle. So you just see this view of this entire town, the entire town, and this car just plowing down this hill, crashing into everything. But then the scene doesn't end there because after they crash the car, they escape on foot, get onto a double decker bus, and then Kevin manages to somehow catch up to the bus, don't know how, climbs it. Then we see the bad guys try to push him off. He's hanging by off of a literal umbrella, as we said. I think at one point he's even behind the bus, latching on as it's dragging him again with
Yeah.
the umbrella. Crazy. Then he finally gets to the front of the bus, and as you mentioned, the guys come toppling out. And I mean, I feel like with any other movie, this would be a climax. But to open with this, I don't even know what else to say. Do you have anything else to add to this
Yeah, it's like they gave
introduction?
you like you said, it's like they gave you the climax first. It's
Yeah.
like dessert for
Yeah.
the opening course.
For
Okay,
breakfast?
yeah, dessert for breakfast. Police Story is dessert for every entree. It's just
Yeah.
like I
Ooh, I
start with
like that.
cheesecake and you end with lava cake. It's like it's
Ooh,
crazy. Yeah.
yes. Oh, I love you. So many zingers, Pat, today. There's so much that I can use here. I love this. So it's also worthwhile noting, I think I forgot to mention it earlier, but all of these stunt guys, they're a part of Jackie's personal stunt team. And
Yes.
in 1983, he formed the Jackie Chan stunt team. And he practices with these guys. They're in his movies. And he loves these guys. In the supplemental information on the Criterion release of this, the doc, I think he refers to his Jackie Chan stunt team as his family, and he truly
Yeah.
just considers them equal players. They even give him the confidence to pull off certain stunts that he'd otherwise be too scared to do. So it's this very like bros being loving bros vibe on the film set, essentially. And that's just so heartwarming to me that he fosters this environment on set. It's probably why they're all willing to like risk their lives, basically. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's integral to what they do because
Mm,
on any other film when you have you're working with a different stunt team for that particular film or whatever, for what Jackie's trying to do, there's an immense amount of trust with both
mm,
parties that needs to be established. If you watch the documentary or just him talking about his stunt team in general, it's like I'm gonna punch you so close to your face, and if you move, you could get hurt. But there has to be this bond and this trust between the two of us that I can't imagine if an actor or a stuntman was working on a film and there's not that familiarity. I think that's where the disconnect happens. Why stunts are just not as cool in any
mm.
other film. This team is like a family, and I think that's why you get the best out of it because they trust each other, you know,
Yeah.
instinctually to pull it off. It is in every Jackie Chan film the sort of cornerstone to why everything is so cool. You can tell that's like they obviously trust each other an immense amount, and that's how they keep. I know that they're all getting hurt constantly, but that's how they actually try to keep each other safe. I mean, no one's died, so I guess
Yeah. Knock on wood.
yes, that
Um,
guy, yeah.
yeah, so the other sequence I wanted to highlight is, of course, the final mall brawl. Again, we did talk about it a little bit, but I really want to get into it. So,
Mm, hmm.
mainly, I want to get into the stunt that sees Jackie or Kevin basically trying to catch up to these bad guys. They're in the mall. They have the briefcase that Kevin needs, and they're
Yeah.
like, what is it, 3 or 5 floors below him?
Yeah.
So he literally jumps, slides down this massive pole covered in lights. These lights explode as he's going down. He, before he even reaches the floor, he crashes through a glass ceiling on one of the
Yeah.
floors,
Of course.
falls,
Not enough
then
glass breaking.
somehow, yeah, and then he falls to the ground after all of this and somehow gets back up again and keeps fighting. Like, what?
You
I
also
just,
get one of the best villain takes. It's like the most iconic
which
sort
one?
of. It's just like it's the shot where I think like the old boy is looking up like the leader of the drug cartel
Yeah.
gang or whatever. He's looking up and it does the extreme close up to his face. Like I
Oh
love
yeah.
I love those shots. Like it's like cliche now. Like it's like an
Yeah.
action trope to like extreme fast close up of the villain
Mm.
like looking up like in disbelief as to what's happening. Like it's so good though.
I mean, warranted. This guy just slid down a pole and through glass. I mean,
Yeah,
I would be looking that way too.
yeah,
But yeah, it's just bananas. As we said, this pole is basically like a chandelier, is what Jackie calls it, but I think that's incorrect. It's like a pole made out of these twinkling lights, and they're strung around on these thick wires. So as he's sliding down, the sparks and the broken glass, everything that you see, that's very real. And I discovered that this stunt literally almost left him paralyzed because he nearly broke the seventh and eighth vertebrae in his spine. And like, what? But it gets better. It turns out that the production electrician forgot to plug the lights into a low voltage car battery. So Jackie actually got, what we see is twice the amount of jolt than anyone thought he would. It burned his skin off of his fingers and his palms from sliding down. He had blood running through his face and glass sticking to him. And then we see him getting up and fighting. Like, just let that, like, what?
it's so good. It's so
I have,
incredible.
I
It's
have
almost like he
literally,
was like, if I'm gonna make the best Jackie Chan movie, it'll also be the last one. Like
yes.
I will die making it.
And no wonder he shows it 3 times then. If he had all that stuff
Yeah.
happen, he was like, look, listen, you got to see this from all angles.
Here's the thing: if he did show it 3 times, I'm rewinding and watching it 3 times. So it doesn't.
Yes.
It just saves me the like having to rewind 30 seconds button. So he's
It's
efficient even
incredible.
with showing it to us. It's like
Yes.
don't you touch that dial. I'll show it to you multiple times.
Yeah. And the thing is, I've shown this movie to some people, and I've had some people be like, well, it's nothing that special. And then I pause it and I'm like, listen up here. And I explain the stunts and that this is people actually getting hurt, especially this stunt itself as well. And then like it'll clue in for some people and they'll be like, holy shit, this is actually epic. So even if you're, for some reason, I don't know how you would be, but if you're bored by this movie, you got to admit that it's still impressive any way you spin it, because I mean, I haven't seen anything in Hollywood like this. Have you?
No, and if you're, I mean, I would take it a step further. If you're bored by this movie,
What's
movies might
wrong
not
with
be
you?
for you. No, yeah, they just maybe that's just not your thing. Like, go fly a kite or take up Parcheesi. I don't know. The movies might not be your thing at that point, because if that doesn't, I mean, check your pulse. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's incredible. The other thing he brings to the table, which we haven't talked about, which
Mm.
I immensely appreciate, with specifically the hand to hand combat stuff, is, and he said this in multiple interviews. Doesn't make logistical sense that if one person is fighting 1-on-5, which Jackie is always
Mm.
outnumbered, if it's a 1-on-5 thing in traditional movies, even after Jackie Chan sort of figured it out, it doesn't make
Mm.
sense that the bad guys would essentially be waiting in the
Waiting.
shadows to get their ass kicked. It doesn't make sense. It's like, in traditional action movies, it's 1-on-1, and then that person gets flipped over and knocked out, and then another person enters
Mm.
to fight. Jackie sort of was like, that logistically makes no sense. We have to figure out how I can fight 3 or 4 or 5 people at the same time with all of them coming at me together. Like,
Mhm.
not just waiting for their comeuppance. And I really appreciate that because it creates some really interesting and complex fighting sequences that I have got to be shot over and over and over again because I
Hmm.
can't imagine someone's getting flipped over. Someone will always have Jackie from behind, and he's like doing, he's struggling, and he'll always like kick the guy in front of him and somehow like, get the guy off his back. It's so much more intriguing and complex
Hmm.
and just like easier to digest because you're just being absorbed by it. It's so much more, you know, high end than any other sort of action sequencing that you ever see in any other movies.
Absolutely. And the thing that I love is you just read my mind because I wanted to mosey along and talk about the rhythmic nature of his fight sequences
Oh, good,
because
good.
that's exactly what we're yeah. But no, I'm happy you brought that up. I actually don't think I was going to touch on that, but you're totally right. Just that concept of that's really what bothers me in some action movies when you see like a gaggle of men waiting like for their
Yeah,
opportunity to fight someone. It always reminds me of like video games. Like I feel like that's video
it's
games in a
very
movie.
video game-esque. Yeah, Teenage
Yes,
Mutant Ninja
yes.
Turtles suffers from this. It's like the Foot Clan. What are you doing, guys? Like, come on, you guys got
Standing
numbers.
around. Yeah,
Let's
that makes
go.
no
I know they're
sense.
all like teenagers, and teenagers are instinctually lazy, but like,
That is true.
get in
Figure
there. Come on,
it
guys.
out, yeah.
Yeah, there's 4 turtles. There's like 100 of you. Let's go.
Yeah, it's be so easy. So, where did I stop? Where did I pause? Ah, yes, rhythmic nature of fight sequences. So, I think that this is really what makes this movie so special, as you were saying, and not even just police story, but you watch something like Drunken Master. Let's use that as an example.
Hmm.
And I mean, the rhythm, even in that, it's something you immediately pick up on. It's almost like a dance, really,
Hmm.
to me. And there's a unique elegance to the way Jackie and his team fight. And again, keep in mind that he was trained in that opera school, right? So he's also an acrobat, he's also a fighter. He uses all this to his advantage. And there's a documentary that I watched with Jackie. Can't remember what it was called now, but he speaks about how timing is everything in his fight sequences, which also speaks to what you were saying earlier as well. This synchronicity of giving each movement an action and a reaction in each shot. And he said that he makes things look more like dancing than fighting. Again, as we said at the start, this is so much more theatrical than watching Bruce Lee, for example. Not to say that there's anything bad with that. It's just different. It's a
It is
performance. Would you agree?
choreographed ballet of violence. That's what it is.
Yes,
It's
that's what
a
he said.
it is. It's a you're watching a violent dance.
Yeah.
Like but there's a this is why, and I don't want to get on a subject that I'll never get off of, but this is why I love professional wrestling. There is a you're both engaged in this act, and
Mm,
you're both complicit in how it looks. Like at the end of the day, it's a team effort. Not one person can carry the sort of action through, and you can see it in the sequencing here. It's
mm.
multiple people working together for a common goal, and it looks so much cooler than traditional sort of fight sequencing. Or at the time, this is 1985, this is at
Mm.
the height of Stallone, Schwarzenegger, this sort of real machismo sort of big explosions, big guns, big muscles. And Jackie is the antithesis of that. It's,
Yes.
this slender sort of hopeless romantic that
Hmm.
when push comes to shove can also just obliterate a gang of people. And it's a really fun juxtaposition with what is going on in the States action wise, and but it's something that he carries through, throughout his career.
Hmm. And I would say a huge difference with that, and what's actually really interesting is that he knows how to fight, and
Yeah,
so does his team. And so, not all the time, but sometimes they really are hitting each other.
yeah,
And we see all of that. I mean, granted, I'm sure there's pads being used sometimes, but what you see truly looks like it hurts. Unlike again, movies that you watch in Hollywood that I mean, clearly they not to say that they don't know what they're doing, but in comparison, they don't know what they're doing.
yeah.
And
Mm.
what's so impressive about all of this when it comes to Jackie is the way that these scenes are edited. Do you know where I'm going with this?
No,
Oh, okay. This is going to
surprise
be
me.
great. Yes. So, one major factor of Jackie's fight sequences is how he visually presents them. So, he never cuts away in the middle of the action. So,
Ah,
like we
yes,
said,
yeah,
we see action and reaction. So, what do I mean by that? The camera's always going to be static. It's always going to be this wide angle. And when someone gets hit, we as an audience see that. As we said, he'll even sometimes go as far as to show a scene multiple times just to get his point across of like, holy shit, we did that. But one of my favorite YouTube essayists, Tony Zhu of Every Frame of Painting, he has a video on Jackie Chan's style. Have you seen that?
no.
Oh,
Putting it in
highly
my notes
recommend
to
it.
watch. Yeah,
It's
sounds
it's
great.
yeah, just put Every Frame of Painting Jackie Chan, it'll pop up. I highly recommend it. But he raises a bunch of points that I noticed just through going through Jackie's interviews and brilliant video essay. But anyway, he brings up something so clever, and that's that Jackie always sets himself up initially to be at a disadvantage when he's starting a fight, which is what you said as well. And he'll have something hindering him at the start. We watch him fight out of it, ultimately crush these baddies, but he always starts off as the underdog. And I
Yes.
think that that's what makes him more endearing to us as an audience, right?
Yeah, it's an attainable sort of action hero. People want to root for the underdog. That people want to see themselves in someone that is has the cards stacked against them,
Mm-hmm.
and they see themselves in that adversity, parallel to their own lives and the adversities that we go through, because it's film at the end of the day is escapism, and that translates really well to what
Mm.
people want to see, and how they connect to movies. And I think that's the brilliant sort of nature of what he does. Is it's never he shows up, never, not once, unlike Bruce Lee. When Bruce Lee shows up, it's like, oh shit, everybody is screwed. Like, we know as an audience, everybody should get out of this room now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the case with. It's not like Jackie shows up and we're like, these
Uh-oh.
guys, they're in for it. I'm like, oh no, Jackie, take care of yourself. Like, were you worried for him? And
Yes.
you're not like, he's about to bring the pain. He's about to bring the pain to himself. He never walks away and everybody has been laid to waste, and everyone's like knocked out or dead, and he's like stepping over bodies on his way out. He barely scrapes by. He like does as much as he can to survive, and then gets out of there with people usually running and still trying to kill him. And
Yeah.
it's more realistic that way.
Absolutely. Oh, I didn't even think of that, but you're so right. It's always just barely that he makes it out. Yeah, that does make him really endearing. Oh, this just makes me want to go revisit Police Story again. But what else was I going to mention next to that? We brought up Keaton, we brought up Chaplin, yes. But I was also reading another interview where Jackie said that he's influenced, this is crazy, or it was crazy to me, by Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire, of all people, with his fight choreography.
No, I could totally see it. I could see the
You once
rhythmic
you
sort of
yeah,
nature. Yeah. You also have to
yeah.
be very light on your feet. There's a sort
Hmm.
of genteel quality to despite the violence, it is this sort of give and take that is like that, not unlike dancing with a partner. And I think
Yes.
he translates that through his background. That's not as weird as it sounds.
Yeah, exactly. So that now brings me to my next point, and another crucial element of Jackie's style, and that's obviously the comedy that he injects into his fight sequences, the usage of props. And this extends even past the fight sequences, like that scene where he's on multiple phones. You know which one I'm talking about? I love that one. And that to me is
It is,
very
yeah.
Buster Keaton-esque. Or maybe,
Yes,
yeah, yes, yes. And
it,
I
it
believe
is.
that he's even referred to as the Buster Keaton of Kung Fu. Have you heard that?
I've not. I mean, it makes all the sense
Yeah.
in the world. I think that the Chaplin stuff comes in with his. I think the most Chaplin thing in this movie is him not knowing that his girlfriend May is overhearing him from the shower,
Yes.
and him getting like multiple pies to the face, this literal like sort of cornerstone of slapstick, like a literal pie to your face happening multiple times. I think this sort of innocent misunderstanding in the way
Hmm.
of romance is what Chaplin was sort of always, hit or miss with certain ladies. Like I think of Gold Rush. I think of like
Hmm.
when he falls in love with certain characters, it never goes smoothly, and that feels like Jackie in a lot of his films. He's like this clumsy sort of hopeless romantic that you're cheering for,
Hmm.
and then you get the sequences like with the multiple phones, which is
Yep.
not just comedy, it's also, a testament to his ability as a stunt performer as well, because that's hard to do. He's like
Yeah.
wrapping phone cords around and like talking to, you have to also, from a logistical standpoint, he's, talking to the person on the phone that we know that phone is a certain person.
Hmm.
And when they get all wrapped and tangled, he as a performer has to make the scene make sense. The phone that he's talking into, he might be thinking he's talking to a different person, but we as an audience member remember that phone is the
This,
girl who's in
yeah.
distress or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I think Police Story is just such a delight, because sandwiched between all of these, let's call them bigger scale sequences, like the opening or
Mm-hmm.
the end, we get a lot of these like micro physical comedy moments. The movie's just littered with them. And I love them just the same. Like you're saying, that pie sequence, hilarious. The phone sequence, like this rewatch after that phone bit, I really sat down and I was like, wow, this is so impressive. It looks so easy, but I think at one point he even like flips a pen up with his foot or
Yes.
something and grabs it with his hand
Yeah.
while holding all these phones. Like it's crazy. So what makes it work so well, especially with the fights, is when he brings all these small props and he uses them and makes these sequences so unique. So he'll
Yes.
play around with chairs or umbrellas, as we said, or, well, that's in the second one, but I'll mention it anyway, the playground that you mentioned.
The
Or,
playground. Yeah, I don't want to make this a whole Police Story 2 video. We haven't talked about it a lot, but if you've watched Police Story and you heard us say like, let's not, Police Story 2 isn't as good, so you are just not going to check it out based on that alone.
check it
Watch
out.
it for the
Yeah.
yeah, once they get to the playground, check out the playground scene. It is on par with anything in the first one, and then you can check out if you'd like to, but that playground scene is incredible.
Hmm. And it just speaks to something that Jackie said once as well. He said everything can be used as a weapon, which I
Mm.
adore. And I mean, I couldn't even rattle off all the props that he uses in Police Story. What's your favorite usage of a prop in the first one?
That's interesting. It's the I it's really the little things. Like it's stupid, but when he's using the pencils as chopsticks and he swallows the eraser, like what a
Yes.
silly, stupid little
Yes.
comedic sort of thing. But he
Mm.
just did the phone routine, and then he sits down to eat his ramen, and is inexplicably eating it with two pencils from the desk. Like that's such a silly little gag that like those could have been chopsticks and whatever. Like the scene would end there or whatever, but it ratchets it up by being pencils, and then he has
Mhm.
an even weirder sort of end to that. I mean, in terms of the actual fight sequencing, though, in this it's the umbrella. It
Yes.
like what he manages to do with the umbrella. In other Jackie Chan stuff, he uses jackets a lot, where he's tangled up in a jacket and then somehow uses the jacket as a sort of weapon. Like you said, anything is a weapon. He takes
Mhm.
the jacket off. The bad guy now has a jacket wrapped around his head and doesn't know what's going on. He's taken it off so fast and wrapped it around this dude's head. It's great. He literally uses his environment and the pieces around it to really combat his deficiency when it comes to being 1 on 5, 1 on 10. Like he has to almost use everything around him. What about you?
My
What is your favorite thing in this, prop wise?
Probably the umbrella. Probably the
Yeah.
umbrella. When it comes to his filmography, I really enjoyed. I think that was in Project A, the bike sequence.
Yes. Yeah.
I love the bike sequence. And then at one point, there's like a kettle on the ground for no reason on the street, and with the bike, he like whips the kettle from the ground up at this guy and like scalds him. Like
So good.
how does that happen? I had to rewatch or rewind and rewatch that bike sequence. I think like two more times in a row because I was like, this is crazy. Like, just the way doors are opening through all these alleys.
I
This sounds
love it.
crazy
Yeah.
for anybody who hasn't seen it, but yeah, Project A is great fun.
Have you seen Rumble in the Bronx?
Ages ago, like when I was a kid. I'm honestly due for a rewatch.
It's a very childlike sort of
yeah.
movie. Yeah. But my favorite, very, very favorite Jackie Chan this idea of using props is I think he's in like the henchman's clubhouse, and there's a bunch of abandoned furniture or whatever around. And he gets knocked into a refrigerator with both the doors closed. And he's like opening the freezer part at the top and like punching out of the freezer and then closing it. And then like opening the bottom half of the fridge to like kick and punch. It is one of the most ridiculous. And then he uses like shopping carts and all these things where he's like thrown through the shopping cart and it closes, like the child seat closes him in, but he's using it as both defense and offense. It's incredible. Another, if you're just interested in more Jackie Chan stuff, Rumble in the Bronx is a very palatable sort of watch with very fun fight sequencing similar to this.
I would say I'm very picky with his more Hollywoody stuff, but I do like Rumble in the Bronx. It's better than Rush Hour, which I think was my first Jackie Chan movie.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Probably, yeah. I still got to revisit those as well, but I'm kind of nervous too. I feel like they're not going to hold up for me.
They don't hold up. They don't hold up from a number of different aspects. The number one being is Jackie is sort of neutered in a lot of his Hollywood stuff, where just like we said, let Jackie drive the bus. Chris Tucker's driving the bus, and Jackie. I also think the comedic element of it doesn't age really well. Language barrier stuff and what they're asking Jackie to be funny with is not as that stuff doesn't age, and it's not like a Jackie Chan film where he has all these really elaborate fight sequences or anything like that. It's it's an Americanized Jackie Chan, which is not letting him drive the bus. Like
not what we want. Yeah. Well, I think I will save some time to get into some differences with Hollywood and his Hong Kong stuff because I do want to cover that. But
sure.
I do want to mention that for those of you listening, there's tons of docs and resources on the Criterion channel that you can check out. And in one video, I did want to mention Jackie talks about how he actually thinks that what he does can be replicated. It's just that he takes his time. So for another one of his movies, The Young Master, he fights with this Chinese fan and he throws the fan, but it has to come back. And this took him over 120 takes. And he says when people come up to him and say, whoa, like, look how crazy good you are at all these stunts and these like physical comedy gags, blah, blah, blah. Jackie's response is that anyone can do it. You just have to have the patience to try and get it right. And so he is a perfectionist on set. And again, that makes me think of that telephone scene in Police Story where he's holding like what we said, like 4, 5, 6 phones.
Yeah, at least. Yeah.
And flipping the pencil with his foot. So can you imagine how long that must have taken? It must have been another like fan situation.
Yeah, because there's the editing is not frenetic. Like it's like later sort of action movies become this sort of whiplash effect of editing to both mask the lack of physical talent, but also to sort of make, it's the antithesis of it, but it's supposed to make things more frenetic and seem to have more, action to it. But yeah, it's almost like a pride thing with him where it's like, we're not going to have even a single cut in this because if I can't do it in a single take, then I shouldn't be able to do this at all. And I won't let editing be a crutch as to how I complete the sequencing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I mean, even if you watch the credits to so many of his movies, Police Story included, the bloopers, you can see how many times some of this stuff takes them. And it's a lot, to say the very least. But yeah, so as I mentioned, I did want to save a little bit of time just to chat about the differences between his American movies and his Hong Kong movies. A lot of this will just be piggybacking off of all the stuff that we've chatted about thus far. But I'm curious, and maybe this is just me being specific, but when you watch an American action movie, after perhaps recently having watched or rewatched a Jackie Chan film, do you zero in on the differences of the fight sequences?
It's just different. I compartmentalize that I'm in for a different experience. And
Okay.
so I try not to bring that to the table. It depends on what I'm watching and who it is that is the central performer. I know what I want to get out of like a Stallone, and I know what I want to get out of a Schwarzenegger, and I know what I want out of a Jackie Chan movie. And I think it's just different flavors of things that always interest me, and I think it can be done in different ways and achieve the same sort of action fervor that I love. I disagree with what you said earlier, which is me disagreeing with JC, which is not anybody can do this. Get the hell out of here, Jackie Chan. Excuse me. No. And not at my most physical, like not the most physicality I've ever had in my life. No, it's not a determination thing. At some point, it is also a skill level that has that. I mean, come on. So, but having said that, I don't expect that out of my American action movies. It's totally different vibe. I don't. What do you think about that?
About how
Like,
I feel when I'm
yeah,
watching
do you bring that sort of bias to your American? I mean,
it's
you could let it ruin
hard.
your experience.
And it does some of the time. The way that I'm seeing it is if I've watched a Jackie Chan movie in recent memory, like very, very like recent past, it will kind of ruin it for me because I'll be like, they cut here, they cut here. This was a close up. Why was this a close up? It's not real. Having said that, if it's, I mean, my memory is that of like a goldfish. So if it's been like, I don't know, like 2 weeks and I haven't watched a Jackie Chan movie, then we're fine.
Yeah.
But if I was gonna watch, say, I don't know, like Police Story or something, and then right after that throw on something else, then I would be irritated. Let's say that much. Like actually, here's a good example. I watched. My God, I can't even think of the name right now.
Mm.
Kill, the new action movie.
Oh, I
Was
haven't
it?
seen
Is
it.
it
It
called
looks.
Kill? Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, but I think I would have enjoyed it more if I wasn't watching Police Story literally like a few hours before or a day before.
Yeah, that might be that. That's true with a lot of things. I just saw Twister before I went to see Twisters. It's like, is this the best idea to really set myself up for failure? Turns out Glenn Powell's just having himself a summer, so Twisters was delightful. But in general, yeah, it's not like a recipe for success.
Yeah.
I wouldn't watch an older Stallone movie before I go see Expendables 4. Like, am I trying to have the worst time ever?
Yeah.
I don't want to remind myself of how good it could be.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I feel. So I'm very wary if I'm going to watch some Jackie Chan, then don't watch action movies after that for a little while. Go watch like a thriller or something, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But so the major difference, and again, I'm not saying all American action movies do things this way, no broad generalizations here, but the major difference is a lot of the time it comes down to the cutting with the action and the reaction that we were talking about earlier. So with those Western movies, they'll also add more close ups. They'll cut in the middle of a fight because people aren't actually getting hurt, and so on. And Jackie himself has said that this is in his words, not mine. Again, I'm going to preface this that there are a lot of camera movements in Hollywood, or more camera movements in movies in Hollywood, because their actors don't actually know how to fight. Whereas with a film like Police Story, as we were saying, you get those wide angles, the static camera, everything in the same shot. And we watch as Jackie and his team basically beat the shit out of one another.
Hmm.
And the reason I asked you if you zero in on those differences is, like I said, I always pay attention to the action and the reaction if I watch something after watching a Jackie Chan movie. And I mean, honestly, it's kind of a great way to spoil your experience, as you were saying. But then once you revisit something like Police Story, you just appreciate it so much more. And you really notice that rhythm that he has in all of his fight sequences, how he combines that rhythm in one single shot. Am I making sense?
Yes, it's unflinching.
Yes.
Like
Oh, I like that.
he doesn't shy away from, if he's going to set something up, you're going to see that through to its logical conclusion.
Hmm.
He doesn't leave any sort of imagination on the table. Like, if I'm going to toss somebody through his favorite thing, a glass window or whatever, like, I want to see that person go through it, land, have the bits of glass like cascading into their face, and this expression of what can only be described as real agony. Like, it's incredible. It's and that sort of unflinching quality I just attribute to Jackie Chan movies, and that's where the compartmentalization comes in, where I'm like, that's the
Mm.
experience I'm getting with that.
Hmm.
And I don't. It's not that I can't hold American action movies to that standard. I just think it's a different aesthetic.
Hmm.
But I certainly appreciate how unflinching he is with his action sequencing.
Hmm. And I should also use this opportunity to mention as well, it's not solely because major actors don't know how to fight and need stunt doubles, because I would assume even Jackie himself has used doubles, especially now later on in his career as he's getting older. But the other reason is the time constraint on a movie. And Jackie
Yeah,
has said this too. You touched upon it earlier. I remember with when we were talking about Rush Hour briefly. And as we mentioned with the story of that fan, that Chinese fan, and how many takes that took, Jackie is a perfectionist. And when he's doing these movies in Hong Kong, he has the backing of these studios who let him do what he wants to do with his budget. They support him. But then in Hollywood, you get the budget constraints and things need to be kept moving along. And actually, in another interview he had with Film at Lincoln Center, he explained how he didn't have that creative freedom when he was shooting films like Rush Hour, which you even used as an example yourself. And if you truly compare the fight sequences in something like Rush Hour versus Police Story, the differences are just right there. They're glaring. So,
yeah. He's also used as, specifically in Rush Hour, he's used as this caricature of
mm,
you know of of Eastern of culture that is different. Like, it's supposed to be a fish out of water story,
hmm,
and it's supposed to be like this juxtaposition of American culture and the Far East, and, like, how that sort of creates its own comedic dynamic. It's just, I'd rather see him used more
yeah,
efficiently and to his talents, especially in the prime of his career. Still
hmm,
in the '90s, it sucks to just see him kind of used as this caricature.
hmm,
That's not as intriguing to me.
exactly. And this isn't me saying, like, don't go watch a Hollywood Jackie Chan film. I mean, watch
No.
whatever you want. But I just think that his Hong Kong movies are better. And if all that you've seen, to those of you listening, is this Hollywood stuff, explore some of these other gems because they will truly blow you away if you just watch them and realize literally everything that we've talked about thus far, how much goes into them. And they're really memorable. And even with Police Story, it's not, as you were saying, this wildly original narrative.
Mm.
It's everything to do with the way Jackie tells the story. Again, you covered all this earlier. It's all that unique physical comedy, the stunts. Really, it's just what makes it so timeless, in my opinion. So,
Yeah.
anything you want to add to this before we start wrapping?
No. This has been so fun. I
Yay.
I hope to cover Police Story on a third podcast 5 years from now.
You'll have to
I'll
come back
never
and
stop
do
talking
all
about
of
it.
them. Same.
Oh boy, yeah, yeah. I'll
That'd be
have me
fun.
back for any and all Jackie Chan content. Obviously, have me back if you do any sort of horror content. But
Of
no,
course.
yeah, this has been such a fun discussion on a movie that I think specifically, if you don't know where to start, there seems to be like an overwhelming amount of kung fu movies, specifically like cinema out of Hong Kong. I This is the perfect starter pack movie
Mhm.
to really test the waters as to if this is something this genre would be something you would like because it doesn't get much better.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. I mean, yeah, I think this was the first Hong Kong movie of his that I watched, and it just opened up the floodgates, and now I'm obsessed. But yeah, is there anything you want to shout out at all? Your socials or anything else you may be working on?
At Pippy Drippy on TikTok, at Pippy Screams on
Ooh.
Instagram. That was more so because who knows what is actually happening with TikTok, but I'm way more active on TikTok, and
Mm.
obviously I focus more so on horror content, but this kind of stuff is also right up my alley.
Yes. Well, cool. Well, I'm gonna go think about more Jackie Chan movies. I'm sure I'll be talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on again. I really appreciate it. And for everyone else, go enjoy Police Story. That's all I can say. Get the physical criteria on release because it's gorgeous. You get a poster of Jackie as well. And that's kind of all for me. So thanks everyone. And until next time. Bye.